In 1980, there was this fun little song by the Vapors that went, I think I'm turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. According to the songwriter, the song was about growing up and turning into something completely different from what you expected. But that song could be a metaphor for what happened as the 1980s wore on. See, at the time, the Japanese had all the money, so they were buying everything. They bought companies, properties, technologies, real estate. This happened all around the world, but especially here in the United States. For a time, they even owned Rockefeller Center. And naturally, this led to some anxiety and even resentment. The movie I have for you this time explores that. This time, we're talking about Rising Sun, a crime/action movie from 1993, directed by Philip Kaufman, based on a book by Michael Crichton. Our story goes like this. The Nakamoto Corporation is trying to buy out an American semiconductor company. The negotiations are proceeding along when, during a gala party, a sexy chick is murdered in the Nakamoto boardroom. Our heroes, detectives Webb and Connor, are called in because they have experience with Japanese culture and can act as liaison between the Japanese and their boss, Captain Graham. Connor, as it turns out, is pretty much gone native, so to speak, and he has oceans of experience dealing with Japanese culture, while Webb is still learning. So Connor leads and Webb is trying to catch up. Video records of the murder go missing, and then, when they're found, it turns out they were doctored. When Connor and Webb start to get close, outside powerful forces begin to interfere, trying to sideline our heroes, if not outright neutralize them. Along the way, suspects include a young Japanese executive with ties to the Yakuza, a senator who's working on legislation to stop the buyout of the American company, and several of the Nakamoto corporate samurai and their security men. We have Sean Connery as Connor, and no matter if he's playing a Spaniard, a Russian, or a guy speaking Japanese, it's gonna be in a Scots accent. Wesley Snipes is his partner, Webb. Sadly, he only has one fight scene towards the end. Also in the cast, we have Harvey Keitel as their boss, Captain Graham, Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, a very familiar face, as Eddie, the young executive. Mako appears as the head of Nakamoto, and Ray Wise from Twin Peaks plays the senator. Steve Buscemi and Tia Carrere are here, and Stan Shaw plays a Nakamoto security guard. This movie is kind of a throwback to the previous decade, given that it came out more or less at the tail end of the Japanese spending spree. And while the video technology shown is contemporary and even cutting edge for its day, the movie is dated in other ways. The open hostility toward the Japanese wouldn't fly today, and this movie is kind of a bizarre tourist eye view of Japanese culture and society. It makes them look almost like the Borg, all of one mind and implacable and even frightening. Twitter would crucify this movie. In the first place, you have masculine Japanese guys surrounded by sexy chicks as their playthings. And second, it casts the Japanese culture in a broadly negative light. Still, I think Rising Sun is kind of like Star Trek, in the sense that Starfleet and the crew of the Enterprise supposedly represent the very best of humanity. If you only ever interacted with them, you might have a skewed perception of what humans as a whole are like. Likewise, if all you ever saw of Japan was its corporate executives and boardrooms, you might come away thinking the Japanese are all like the ones we see in Rising Sun. If this movie had come out just 4 or 5 years earlier, it might have resonated more. Well, Crichton wanted to write a wake-up call about the potential dangers of the new Japanese corporate overlords gobbling up property and technology. It fell on deaf ears. And the movie, based on his book, watered some of that down, so critics at the time said both the movie and the book were kind of bland. But I still kind of like this one, although it is dated and it is, admittedly, flawed. The byplay between Connery and Snipes is fun, and I think they're both good here. And that redhead, man! Holy guacamole, wow! I'm giving Rising Sun 2.5 paws. It's better than you think, even though its worldview is narrow, dated, and very much a product of its time. And at the same time, it's not as good as it could have been. There is an artifice employed to tell part of the movie in flashback that doesn't really add anything to the picture. But the movie is entertaining and the mystery is pretty engaging too. The cast is pretty good and there's enough action to move things along. You can watch my review of Black Rain here, and down there you can see more reviews of movies from the 1990s. You take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.